Welcome everyone to part 83 of the r/civ Battle Royale. I'm Burgerkrieg reading slides by X-Rock, a long-time lurker of the sub and honoured to have the opportunity to narrate a part. Our opening artwork here is brought to you by Robster Art, and it's the cover of a new book by Sun Tzu, as his main character rides across the partially frozen plains of Sibir. Next up we have the Gundy Map, updated by Spherical Melon, charting out all the recorded cities and associated lands struck by nuclear hellfire, and the 11 cities that were nuked right off the map, though some of them have been resettled. That's about, 20% of the cylinder that has tasted the effects of uranium surprise? Here's the power rankings number 1, still held by the Boers to the surprise of exactly no one. Australia is making an effort on the east coast, and a resurgent Dvin is making some snipes on Finland in the Mediterranean, cutting off the northeastern front. But it seems that at the moment, nothing can loosen the grip the Borg have at the top spot. And now Edzy 1991's almost tile-accurate map, which, if you compare it to the one from the previous part, has changed very little. Dvin makes Mediterranean gains, the Boers take 2 Finnish islands, lose Middelburg to the Aussies, Citadel a couple of tiles off the last Buck Afrikaar holdings that weren't taken by Iceland, and found a new city on the coast of the Red Sea. The only other changes that weren't adjacent to Boer territory are 2 unclaimed tiles on the coast of the Gulf of Mexico finally being claimed, marking a 25% increase in tiles owned by Texas. Let the observationing begin. A shot of the Middle East, where Sri Lanka's advance continues to be held back by immobile Afghan peacekeepers. Great musician puts on an Oasis concert and takes damage from both city bombardment and an adjacent citadel. I guess the Finns are not a fan of their style of music. Meanwhile, Boer workers finish crossing the Red Sea and look to start repairing the improvements damaged by the Vietnam War. So much for the Australian advance. The Boers retake Middelburg, and an armada of cyber subs have wiped all Wobbegong presence from the area. A number of nukes are carried on board several of them as they head east. A close-up of the Spartan core, looking a little empty as the former carpet has gone off to war to great success. I don't recall Finland having any melee units nearby, so the lack of carpet isn't terribly worrying at the moment, but when XComs are available, who knows? Dvin begins the recarpeting with the tank, which I believe is a new unit for them. Iceland recuperates and reinforces in Iberia, fresh off the peace treaty with the Bucks at the end of the last part. The Boers also rebuild their Iberian holdings, with a wave of workers that made quick work of the West African fallout almost done here. A number of Boer melee units embark and head for the Finnish front, several mobile SAMs and a giant death robot joining up with the hover tanks already in the area. The war for Central America continues, with a view of the fallout-covered Mayan homelands. Buccaneer troops close in on Nassau and Port-au-Prince, hoping to take them back before Parks manages to get more Australian defenders in the area. An Inuit XCOM makes landfall passing through, getting a good look at the Bucks' debut Vertol. Off the west coast of South America, we see where Mexi/Maya Australia is getting their reinforcements from. Part of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is finally shaking loose and dispersing. A small Icelandic contingent looks on from the south, getting a little homesick for their naval carpet at home. Yakutia still lives, but the pressure rises as Pedro wakes from his slumber. Open borders with Mongolia have proven useful, with a very reasonable carpet in the area ready to strike. There's even an open tile to the west of Beriozovo to paradrop into, if they can get there before Korea reshuffles to surround them again. A Knight of the Mound table descends from Finland in the north, looking out into the Mediterranean at a damaged but recovering Epidauros. Kekkonen has many planes, but only seems to be using them for token attacks on Jerusalem at the moment, perhaps waiting on repairs. A close-up on our knight spending time in the ruins of a spooky haunted manufactory, because Halloween and stuff. Over in Western Europe, more Iceland and friends. Some Swedish units milling about in the open borders, while a Siberian great musician holds a concert tour stop in a nature preserve next to Neapolis, which, by the way, is the very first city to be taken in war on the cylinder. Another look at Central America. Nassau and Port-au-Prince take some hits, Australia gets a few more ships near Nassau, and it looks like Crowfoot has negotiated open borders with Parks in order to better navigate the western waters. Nukes are exchanged on the Sibir-Vietnam front lines. We see Kandahar has been hit, a couple of tiles of fallout and significant damage to the carpet of units surrounding the city. On the Sibir side, we see fresh strikes to Sharizabs and the capital Kishlik. Their army does appear to be recovering, and a very healthy count of melee units, biotroopers and robot infantry are protected from the skies by mobile SAMs. A strategic view of the same front. We are still on the end of the same turn, so I'm not sure exactly how Sharizabs and Kishlik took additional damage since the last slide. Maybe it has something to do with future worlds, and how some of those new units have different icons, like those biotroopers appearing as infantry here. Further south, we see another of Sibir's nuclear strikes. Ghazni is taken down to the black, and is completely devoid of defenders, with a mobile SAM coming through the hills in the north. Hebron is also in the black, probably from Boer airstrikes, and Dvin's brand new tank in Jerusalem is within striking distance. Everybody hates Kekkonen. The dog pile on the wounded Finland begins, starting with Ingolfur Arnason of Iceland. Open borders with Sweden should enable some progress, but Gustavus replenishing carpet isn't going to be easy to navigate. The Kimberley's tech level may be competitive, but they aren't even close to any Finnish exclave to scoop up. I wouldn't expect much from them in this conflict. Keep on snoozing, Jandamara. Also, a Persian carrier says hi. Tiridates takes the opportunity to strike while the striking's good, and joins this war to clean up some Finnish border gore. Hebron was just in the black, and a carpet of mostly paratroopers should be pretty effective there in the open fields. There's also Yevantashad next door, presenting an opportunity to reunite some of the shattered remains of Armenia. Finland tries pushing back in the Mediterranean theater. Jerusalem's tank has retreated toward Dvin as hover tanks approach. On the left edge of the shot we can see Iceland has taken Ellis, thanks to the troops stationed in Sparta, as in the city. And Finland has struck back, taking it down to the red, and has an advanced destroyer nearby. More of the early Iceland-Finland conflict, a better view of Ellis, and we also see Messine has been taken, by a caravel of all things. Those two cities held a combined 13 aircraft last part, so that was a big hit to Kekkonen's air force. Icelandic paratroopers put pressure on Kumae, Mantinea is left open to a snipe, and Antium is surrounded by Boer hover tanks. Ingolfur wastes no time bringing a nuclear missile on a cyber sub, though that appears to be all he's brought. Finland's core is mighty empty. This could be bad news in short order. China's MRM Scout remains alive and vigilant within Finnish territory. Over in eastern Canada we see the Inuit-Iceland border, with a packed naval carpet and sparse land units as usual. Some Vietnamese troops are out seeing the world, some Blackfoot got lost looking for the Buccaneer front, and a surviving Mexican rocket artillery is exiled to the frozen north. Further west we see the Blackfoot Corps, which has not lost touch with the art of land carpeting. Paratroopers, and more paratroopers as far as the eye can see. The Inuit too are doing a lot better at that over here. Crowfoot better hope he keeps a friendly relationship with the Inuit, because he's significantly outgunned. A look at Mongolia's core shows a decent carpet of units, now sporting more than a couple modern armors. Still sharing open borders with Korea, so that relationship appears to be doing well. Sibir's replenished army looks to make some gains, coming down around Bamda. Vietnam has 10 planes stationed in the city, so the Trunks better use them, move them, or lose them. This appears to be the center of religious conflict on the cylinder. 3 thriving faiths dividing the Vietnamese core pretty equally, and leaving several in the middle without a clear majority. One thing all of Vietnam can agree on though is that drones are pretty fucking dope. More glimpses of religion here, with Judaism leading in the Middle East, and making gains with more religious pressure per follower. The Afghan peacekeepers remain put, and it looks like Sri Lanka's musician didn't make it off the stage from his last show. The Central American scuffle continues, with neither side gaining ground this turn. An Australian digger platoon locks eyes with a horde of buccaneer mutants as they advance over the hills towards Tharapne. Meanwhile, the Bucks have free reign of the rest of the land around Port-au-Prince and Nassau. Back to the Middle East, and Armenia has moved out. Gaza is nearly empty as the paratroopers head for Hebron, Tigranocerta and Constantinople to the north. Yerevan and Bukhara's forces also push north into Yevantoshat. Our spy in Inuit Cincinnati tells us that a Kunik seeks the last of the Ashanti. Where is that little guy anyway? Headed back into Boer territory last I saw. Our spy also reports that this political move was a result of civilian pressure, launched from a viral holographic dance tribute posted on Inuit social media by the Diksaut Zoo after the passing of one of their supposedly immortal animals. The Blackfoot are also plotting, but their remains of Texas is something they can actually get their hands on. Considering Laredo is literally in the way to the Bucks, which they are currently at war with, this would be a war better declared sooner rather than later. The average age of a digger in the autocratic Australian Empire is 19.5 years old. The Australian Army dictates that new recruit must face trials akin to fighting through something that isn't specified in this script to achieve access to better weapons. Conscription is also unavoidable. Australia has brought many drones to this front, almost 50 in cities, another dozen on carriers. How effectively they manage to use them, we'll see. Leogán's in the red again, and Port Royale has recovered back above 20 pop. Beriozovo still stands, surrounded by hover tanks until a Brazilian paratrooper can find an open tile. The Eastern Mediterranean. Nicomedia is bombed into the red, but no melee units threaten it. Hebron is still in the red, with one less hover tank defender and Armenian paratroopers knocking at the gates. Dvin's tank lives, barely. Northern Burfrika rebuilds, constructing regular old farms on regular old deserts. All signs point towards this being a mental team building exercise employed by the Reich. Armenia's push on Yevantoshat is not off to a great start. A hover tank in a citadel is doing a lot of damage to units on the south side, and their UU Great General doesn't have any mounted friends to give their unique promotion to. Open borders with Serbia might help in the long run if Finland doesn't counterattack first. Another UI-less shot, this time of the Aussie core. A hover tank is perched atop Uluru, overlooking a trio of citadels to the east. The Vietnamese coast. Lots of drones in the carpet both on land and water. M is on vacation in Olongapo, getting a little look at the local mech artillery. Kashlik's population has dropped again, meaning they've probably been nuked once more. Meanwhile, we have Yakutia begging for the hurting to stop, making peace with Korea, Mongolia and the Inuit, leaving Brazil as the only ones left to finish them off. A shot of the core in South America shows some pretty nice carpeting, a shiny new giant death robot, and lots of planes. They're about as ready as they can be for a second round with the Buccaneers. In this edition of UI-less hover tanks on natural wonders, Brazil surveys the top of Cerro de Potosi. And Henry Parkes taps out, making peace with the Boers after being pushed back from Madagascar. Kruger is now free to focus on Finland. A couple of luxury resources are up for bans in the next World Congress, namely incense and truffles. Sri Lanka still cannot enter Batticaloa, but it looks like their musician survived. Or maybe that's another one, I don't know. The plotting against dead civs continues, with Ingolf IV of Iceland hoping to finish off the last rocket artillery of Mexico hiding in the Inuit Arctic wastes. Iceland continues to make gains at Finland's expense, taking Mantinea and getting a mobile SAM on the doorstep of Antium, which is still otherwise surrounded by Boer hover tanks. I guess that's gains at the expense of the Boers too, cause those cities were practically already taken. The Knights of the Mound Table that was south of Constantinople appear to have vanished. Armenia's push on Yevantoshat progresses, killing the hover tank and pillaging the citadel to the south, but still not damaging the city itself. The window on this opportunity closes, as Finnish reinforcements come from the north. Armenia must strike hard if they want to take this. A Blackfoot paratrooper joins the diggers in their fight against the mutants of Palenque. Leogan is in the black again, as an Aussie hover tank pushes out of Nassau. More big war declarations as the Inuit and Brazil join forces against Australia. The Aussie core will stay safe, but Park's gains in Central America are now under serious threat from 3 sides. Did Henry Morgan and the Bucks turn their 2 once greatest threats into allies? In other news, Sydney looks to be the first active capital to reach 50 population. Looks like the old lands of Japan are under threat too, as the Inuit Pacific Fleet at Miaulani-Mauka is itching for some action. Nuclear missiles at the ready. A lone Australian paratrooper goes on a suicide mission in an attempt to sabotage an Inuit manufactory on a one-tile island. I don't think he's gonna make it. The waters of Australian Hawaii are invaded by a scattering of ships, and a pair of XCOM units finding room on the island of Ilo. Even the Antarctic Aussie holdings see some action, with half a dozen Inuit ships that just happen to be in the area looking to make some waves. More Inuit XCOM landings appearing along the land reserves of Uxmal. Henry Morgan and the Bucks must be breathing a heavy sigh of relief, as this theatre of war is about to shift. Iceland makes one more push, finishing off Kumae and stealing Antium, effectively closing the Boers off from the Finnish front. With no more borders to Finland, peace should come soon, but who's next for the Boers? That's a lot of border with Iceland now. They may just have made themselves public enemy number 1. A final shot of the Sibir-Vietnam front shows little change, but we do get to see exactly what Vietnam has stored at the airbase in Bomda. That's a lot of bomb. Pliny counts a bunch of pointy sticks, and these are the results. Henry Parks continues to lead thanks to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Kruger is still a little on the depleted side for his known strength, and the rest of the top tiers are about where we'd expect them to be. The middle tiers are about right. Finland needs to build units quickly, as Iceland is coming for them with triple their number. And the rump states. Dvin is extremely low for just having taken 2 cities these last parts. Afghanistan's 5 surviving peacekeepers in Batticaloa are bigger force than 3 civs that are still alive.